Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. This podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double-check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night. Today, we're diving into Roofman. Did you know the real-life thief actually lived inside a Toys R Us for months without getting caught? That's the kind of story we're dealing with. And before we get into it, drop a comment and let us know what movie or show we should cover next, old or new.
It is such a wild story to dig into today.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically explore this upcoming film, Roofman.
Right.
And we want to uncover both the cinematic recreation that we're going to see on screen and the just bizarre, actual true events that this whole thing is based on.
Yeah, because the true events are almost unbelievable.
Exactly. And we're pulling from a pretty massive stack of sources today. Like, we've got behind-the-scenes featurettes, interviews with the cast and the director, Derek Cianfrance.
Plus some actual local news reports from the time, which is really cool.
Yeah, those are fascinating. So we're basically going to figure out how this totally stranger-than-fiction crime story was actually built for the screen.
And it's just a phenomenal stack of materials to go through. I mean, you're looking at a narrative that naturally blends like high-stakes suspense, some real human complexity, and honestly, some very dark humor.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, before we talk about how a film crew actually builds a secret toy store lair,
Right.
we kind of need to establish the real-life crimes that set this whole thing in motion.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this, because we have to start with Jeffrey Manchester,
Right.
who is played in the film by Channing Tatum. So Manchester is a former U.S. Army Ranger. He's a struggling father, and between, 1998 and 2000, he robbed somewhere between 40 and 60 McDonald's restaurants.
Which is just a staggering number of robberies.
It's crazy, and his method wasn't, a standard stick-up where you just walk through the front door.
No, not at all.
He would literally saw his way through the roofs in the middle of the night.
Right, hence the name, Roofman.
Exactly. And then he'd just wait up in the ceiling until the morning shift arrived to unlock the safes, and then he would just drop in.
It's wild.
I mean, I was thinking about it, and he's basically like a reverse Santa Claus, like dropping down through the roof, but he's taking cash instead of leaving toys.
That's actually a great way to put it.
Right, which just makes his eventual hiding spot in a toy store unbelievably ironic.
Yeah, the psychological contrast of this guy is really what anchors the entire story. Because what's fascinating here is you have this intense military precision at play.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, just think about the physical stamina you need to hack through a commercial roof.
Yeah, and bypassing alarms and stuff.
Exactly, bypassing the HVA systems, the alarms, and then just having the tactical patience to sit in complete silence in the dark for hours.
Just waiting.
Just waiting for the exact right moment. But then, when he actually drops down and confronts the fast food employees, he completely flips the script on, what a robbery is supposed to look like.
Yeah, because he was notoriously polite.
He was.
Like, the sources show he would herd the employees into the walk-in freezers, right?
Yeah.
But before he locked the door, he would tell them to make sure they grabbed their heavy winter coats.
Right. He didn't want them to catch a cold while they waited for the police to show up.
Which is just, it's so bizarre.
One Department of Justice spokesperson at the time actually noted the victims were consistently struck by what a nice, decent guy he seemed to be.
A nice guy who just cut through your ceiling and robbed you.
Exactly. He would express genuine sympathy for the people he was robbing. He'd apologize and tell them they were good people.
Wow.
It's this extreme dichotomy. He treated a hostile takeover of a restaurant like almost like an awkward inconvenience he was just sort of forcing on his neighbors.
Yeah, that makes him such an unusual criminal, but I guess it makes him a pretty perfect, multi-dimensional subject for dark comedy.
Oh, absolutely. It's character-driven gold.
But that military precision doesn't last forever. Eventually, it fails him. In 2000, he gets greedy. He tries to rob 2 locations in a single day, and he finally gets caught.
Yeah, the classic mistake.
And he's sentenced to 45 years in a North Carolina prison. Now, if this were a normal true crime story, this is basically where the timeline ends.
Right. He goes to jail, roll credits.
Exactly. But in 2004, the story shifts from, a standard procedural into something out of a literal action movie. Because he escapes.
He does.
And the mechanics of this escape are what really got me when I was reading the sources.
Yeah, because he applies that exact same tactical ingenuity from his robberies to his breakout. So while he's incarcerated at the Brown Creek Correctional Institution, he gets assigned a job in the prison's metal shop.
Okay.
And for 4 years, he doesn't just work. He observes. He memorizes the schedules of all the delivery trucks coming in and out of the facility.
Wow, just waiting again.
Exactly. Then, using his access to the shop, he builds this custom plywood platform.
Mm-hmm.
He spray paints it black so it blends into the shadows, and he actually manages to physically attach this makeshift shelf to the undercarriage of an outgoing truck.
I mean, just picturing the physical reality of that is terrifying to me.
Oh, it's
You're suspended inches above the highway, gripping onto this piece of plywood, while a massive delivery truck is hitting potholes at, like, 60 miles an hour.
Right.
It's just brute force survival, and it works. Like, he literally rides out of a maximum security prison completely undetected.
Yep.
He hitches a ride to Charlotte, North Carolina, and just becomes a fugitive.
Which is incredible. But this is where the story pivots again.
Yeah, because he escapes with this incredibly disciplined military-style evasion. But once he's out, that discipline collides with absolute absurdity.
It's where he hides.
Right. His choice of a hideout is an operating Toys R Us.
It's a hideout that is just as audacious as his roof-cutting robberies, really. He basically realizes that large big-box stores have massive architectural blind spots, so he just moves in.
Imagine you're an employee, right? You're opening that Toys R Us for the morning shift.
Oh.
You walk the aisles, you turn on the lights, and you have absolutely no idea that a fugitive has built this tiny survivor's nest behind the bicycle display.
Right under their noses.
And the details of his lifestyle inside the store are so surreal. He decorates his makeshift bed with Spider-Man sheets that he literally just took off the shelves.
Yeah, the Spider-Man sheets are a great detail.
He exercises by riding kids' bikes down the empty aisles in the middle of the night.
I mean, what an image.
And he even builds a full surveillance system using the store's baby monitors, like placing cameras around the store so he can watch the employees during the day while he's hiding.
All while sustaining himself entirely on baby food and peanut M&Ms that he took straight from the store's inventory.
Okay, I actually have to stop on that detail.
Yeah.
Because as a logical person looking at this scenario, it really bothered me.
The diet.
Yeah. Like, if you have an entire big box store at your disposal and you are living there for months on end, why are you living strictly off jars of pureed carrots and M&Ms?
Right.
That just sounds like an entirely unnecessary way to torture yourself.
Well, it does strip away the fun of hiding in a toy store, but it reminds you that he's treating this environment like a hostile war zone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, if we look at the actual realities of evasion, his diet makes perfect sense. Baby food is highly nutrient-dense, and more importantly, it requires zero cooking.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Crucially, for a fugitive hiding in an enclosed space, it doesn't leave an olfactory footprint.
The smell.
Exactly. If he were heating up frozen meals or, cooking soup in the break room microwave, the building's HVAC system would distribute that scent immediately.
Oh, yeah, the employees would smell it the second they walked in.
Right. And the M&Ms provide non-perishable caloric density for quick energy. It's just that military survival instinct overriding everything else. He traded all creature comforts for absolute security.
Trading comfort for security. Yeah, that completely changes how you view his day-to-day life in there.
It really does.
Now, in real life, his lair eventually grew even more expansive.
Yeah, it got bigger.
He ended up knocking a hole through the drywall into an abandoned Circuit City that was right next door to build an even bigger hideout.
Right, just expanding his real estate.
Yeah, he painted the walls, put up movie posters, and he kept this meticulous workout diary.
Which is so crazy.
Actually, one of the sources we pulled is a Reddit thread from a former employee of that specific Toys R Us who saw the Circuit City lair after the fact.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they described how absolutely tiny the space felt, but how hyper-organized it was.
It's a deeply compelling historical detail.
Yeah.
But, when adapting this reality for the screen, the director, Derek Cianfrance, and the production designer, Inbal Weinberg, made a very deliberate filmmaking choice.
What did they do?
They omitted the Circuit City lair entirely.
Which feels like a massive omission. I mean, if that Circuit City expansion is such a bizarre, stranger-than-fiction fact, why would they leave it on the cutting room floor?
Well, it really comes down to a mix of logistical reality and narrative focus.
Okay.
From a sheer production standpoint, sourcing the materials to build two distinct, massive, era-accurate sets like a fully stocked 2004 toy store and an early 2000s electronics store is a colossal undertaking.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare for the art department.
Exactly. But beyond the budget, from a storytelling perspective, keeping Manchester confined strictly to the Toys R Us creates a much more claustrophobic, immersive environment for the audience.
Oh, that makes sense.
It forces you, as the viewer, to just sit with him in this singular, colorful prison of his own making.
Wow, yeah.
The psychological breakdown of being surrounded by children's toys, yet being entirely isolated from your own children, it just hits harder when you don't dilute the setting.
That is a great point. And the physical production design they executed for that single setting is just a monumental achievement. Oh, it looks incredible.
Like in the behind-the-scenes featurette, Channing Tatum explained how they built the Toys R Us literally down to the inch.
Yeah.
They scouted an actual abandoned big box store in North Carolina.
Yeah.
They brought in truckloads of vintage, period-accurate toys, and they made almost all of the merchandise and utilities fully functional.
Which is so rare for a movie set.
I know. They actually had to get the city to turn the power and plumbing back on in this abandoned concrete shell just to make this set breathe.
That tangible reality is so vital for a director like San France. I mean, his past work, like Blue Valentine or The Place Beyond the Pines, it relies on this gritty, grounded character drama.
Right.
He needs his actors to physically feel the weight of the space they're in. So by creating a fully functional store rather than relying on, like, green screens, he allowed the cast to truly inhabit that surreal environment.
Anchoring the utter absurdity of it in something you can reach out and touch.
Exactly. But having established this massive immersive sandbox, you then have to fill it with actors capable of actually carrying that human emotion.
Yes.
And Channing Tatum's physical and mental transformation into Jeffrey Manchester is really intense.
It requires a profound shift.
Yeah.
Because the real Jeffrey Manchester was a very thin, wiry individual.
Right.
And Tatum, he's naturally built much broader. He carries a lot of protective muscle mass.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
But he dropped down to 172 pounds to match the fugitive's frame.
He really strips away his physical armor for this.
He does.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Tatum actually admitted in an interview that losing that much weight left him feeling an unexpected sense of, like, emptiness and sadness.
Wow.
Yeah, his assistant director even pulled him aside at one point and told him to stop losing weight because he was starting to look genuinely gaunt.
That's intense.
But I guess that physical depletion feeds directly into the desperation of a guy eating baby food behind a bike rack.
Absolutely. And the brilliance of the performance is really how Tatum balances the sheer biological desperation with this undeniable disarming charm.
Yes, the charm is key.
Because that charm becomes weaponized when he meets Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst.
Right, Lee.
Lee is a single mom working the registers at the store. And Manchester starts venturing out of his hiding spot during normal business hours.
Just walking around like a normal person.
Yeah, attending a local church, and he eventually begins dating her.
It's so bold.
And he feeds her this elaborate lie that he has a highly classified government job, which, conveniently explains his odd hours and why he doesn't have a normal apartment.
It's such a good cover story, and Kirsten Dunst is phenomenal casting for this. She brings so much gravity to this exhausted working mother who is just honestly hoping for a single break in life.
Yeah, she grounds the whole thing.
She sees something redeemable in him, and you really understand why she wants to believe the lie. And then to kind of balance that emotional tension, you have Peter Dinklage.
Oh, he's great in this.
Providing this fantastic levity as the stern, miserable store manager, Mitch. And this leads to one of my absolute favorite true details from the sources.
What's that?
So Manchester, sitting in his hidden surveillance nest watching the baby monitors, he would just watch Mitch mistreat the employees all day. So at night, Manchester would secretly sneak into the store's computer system and adjust the schedules to give the mistreated employees better hours.
It's amazing. It's the classic thief with a heart of gold trope, except it's documented fact.
He actually did that.
Yeah, he was donating stolen merchandise to local toy drives. He was fixing employee schedules to act as this secret Robin Hood of retail.
It's so weird.
But the preparation to understand the psychology of the man who does that was really extreme. The director, San France, and Channing Tatum actually spent roughly 400 hours on the phone with the real Jeffrey Manchester.
Who is currently sitting in a maximum security prison.
Yes.
I mean, 400 hours on the phone with an incarcerated bank robber. What do you even talk about for that long?
You talk about the human condition, specifically fatherhood. And this dives right into the director's core theme for the film.
Okay.
San France realized during those calls that the story isn't actually about a heist or an escape or even hiding in a toy store.
What is it about?
It's about the internal struggle between being a father and the societal pressure of being a quote-unquote provider.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
C.N. France uses this term, toxic optimism, to describe Manchester. He was a guy trying to provide for his kids, but he was rationalizing terrible decisions because he genuinely believed his end goal was righteous.
Yeah, that concept of toxic optimism is so relatable, honestly, even if you aren't robbing fast food chains.
Right, totally.
Just think about how often everyday people justify bad behavior, like working themselves into the ground, ignoring their families, or cutting ethical corners, all under the guise of, like, I'm doing this to provide for my family. Manchester just took that universal flaw to a criminal extreme. He buys his daughter a bike he can't afford, so he starts cutting through McDonald's roofs to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's a completely warped sense of duty.
But that is the psychological anchor.
Yeah.
It's a man who practically wrote an action movie for his own life, cast himself as the misunderstood hero, and then actually tried to live it out.
Yeah.
He just couldn't see the collateral damage he was causing around him.
And adapting that kind of warped reality into a cohesive movie tone is a massive challenge.
Feel incredibly hard.
You have to balance a tender romance with Dunst, dark comedy with Dinklage, and a gritty crime drama all at the same time.
Right.
And one of the ways the filmmakers glued those tones together was their choice of medium, because they shot the entire movie on 35mm film.
Yeah, that visual format choice does a lot of heavy lifting here. It gives the final product a very grounded, grainy, authentic 2004 aesthetic.
It really does.
It doesn't look glossy, and it avoids that overly sharp digital look of modern cinema.
It's kind of the visual equivalent of listening to vinyl instead of Spotify.
That's a good comparison.
Because the physical grain of the 35mm film creates this organic, imperfect texture that visually tricks your brain into feeling like you're watching a memory dug up from 2004.
Rather than a sterile modern recreation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they brought reality into the film in other ways, too. Like, the real-life Lee Wainscott, the woman Kirsten Dunst's character is based on, actually appears in the film in a cameo.
Oh, as the crossing guard.
Yes,
Yeah.
as a crossing guard. She was even on set for some of Dunst's key emotional scenes.
Including the real people affected by the story really grounds the production in humanity.
Right.
But, as with any Hollywood adaptation of true events, the filmmakers did sculpt the facts a bit to serve the narrative.
Oh, they made some major departures.
Right.
Let's look at the climax of the story, the arrest. In real life, Lee actually found out the truth from the FBI. She bravely agreed to help the authorities, and she set up a fake 40th birthday party trap. So when Manchester showed up to celebrate, the FBI was just waiting there to take him down.
Yeah, it was a whole sting operation.
But the movie abandons this completely.
It does.
In the film, he is arrested at his daughter's 6th birthday party while trying to give her a stolen bike.
Quite a shift.
Yeah, and they also introduce a completely fictional war buddy character named Steve, played by Lakeith Stanfield, to help him try to flee.
Right.
And maybe most notably, they leave out some of the darker real-life details from his past. Like, there was a domestic disturbance 911 call involving his ex-wife before the robberies even began.
Yeah, that gets glossed over.
And I really struggled with this part of the deep dive, honestly. So what does this all mean? We are talking about a real-life criminal here.
Sure.
By changing the arrest from a sting operation to a tragic family moment and kind of glossing over his darker past, are the filmmakers basically letting him off the hook just to give the audience a cleaner, more emotional climax?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the perpetual tension in biographical filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's the battle between emotional truth and documentary fact.
Okay, unpack that.
A documentary's job is to present the unvarnished chronological timeline of events. But a narrative film's job is to explore the thematic soul of the story.
I see.
By changing the arrest to his daughter's birthday party, the film perfectly juxtaposes his two defining traits.
Right.
You have his mythical evasion skill. I mean, he can hide from the FBI in a toy store for months, colliding with his ultimate failure as a father.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't shield his dark side from his family on a joyous day. The emotional devastation of that cinematic moment serves the movie's theme of fatherhood far better than a standard FBI sting operation would have.
Yes, and structurally, that brings the entire story full circle. It links right back to his original motivation, which was his desire to provide that bike for his kid.
Exactly. And regarding the omission of his darker past elements, filmmakers often have to streamline a character's history to keep the audience engaged with the primary narrative arc.
Because you only have so much time.
Right. If a 2-hour film becomes bogged down in past transgressions and secondary timelines, you kind of lose the specific tragicomedy of the Toys R Us era.
Yeah, it gets too muddy.
So it's less about letting him off the hook and more about focusing the lens tightly on a specific chapter of his life to thoroughly explore that concept of toxic optimism.
It's really the difference between reading a Wikipedia biography and looking at a painted portrait.
That's a great way to say it.
The movie paints a portrait of a guy who simply couldn't get out of his own way, even when he had a good thing going with lay in the church community.
Yep.
He built a literal fantasy world behind a bike rack, but reality always breaches the walls eventually.
And the way reality breached his walls in the real world is perhaps the most poetic detail of the entire case.
Which brings me to the final mind-blowing piece of trivia I want to leave you with today.
I love this part.
It's a detail from the real case that we didn't cover in the main discussion, and it feels like it was written by a screenwriter trying to be clever.
It really does.
Think about how you'd pass the countless hours of isolation in a toy store and an abandoned Circuit City.
Right.
Jeffrey Manchester watched a lot of DVDs, and one of the movies he watched repeatedly was Catch Me If You Can.
Which is just hilarious.
The Steven Spielberg movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio about Frank Abagnale, one of history's most famous con artists who spent his life evading the law.
The irony of a fugitive taking notes from a cinematic fugitive is almost too perfect.
But it gets better. Ultimately, when the police discovered his Circuit City hideout, Manchester had already fled the premises,
Right.
but he left something behind in his haste. It was a
Right.
single fingerprint.
Yep.
And he accidentally left that fingerprint on that exact DVD copy of Catch Me If You Can.
No way.
Yes, that single print is what helped authorities officially track him down and confirm his identity. He was studying a movie about a fugitive, and in doing so, handed the police the exact physical evidence they needed to catch him.
That is amazing.
Life imitating art, literally leaving his mark on it. You cannot make that up.
You really can't.
And that wraps our deep dive into Roofman. If you enjoyed uncovering this unbelievable true story, follow Roll Credit and share it with your fellow true crime fans. And don't forget to drop a comment with what movie or show we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more unbelievable stories. Stay curious.